Okay. And the important part today is that I am here with Kristen Smith,
Hi, I'm so
DevOps.
happy to be here.
Yeah, this is great. Alston Russo was also supposed to be here. So Kristen is DevOps lead at Campspot, and Alston is director of software delivery, but he had something come up. That's okay. Kristen has all the story for you today. Yeah. So Kristen, tell me about Campspot. What do y'all do?
Yeah. So Campspot is a full service outdoor hospitality company. We provide software both to campground owners and to campers who are looking to connect with those campgrounds.
Oh, so it's really about camping.
It's really about camping. It is finding your camp spot. So if you are looking for a place to stay and you go to campspot.com, that is us. And on the back end, the parks that are waiting to welcome you are also using our software.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So as Campspot has grown, how have your challenges changed?
Definitely. So I like to say that Campspot really came of age during the pandemic, which is not something that I think anybody expected when we started out.
Camping
right?
got big suddenly.
Camping got really big. We were experiencing a little bit of organic growth, and then right around the same time that people went into lockdown and started camping more, we saw a huge explosion in traffic, parks entering the system, people wanting to get outside and socially distance, and Campspot really took off. And a couple of interesting parallel things happened at the same time. So our systems became more distributed. We went from being a strictly business to business kind of company working just with campground owners to having a number of products for campers, for parks of certain sizes. And so our systems were getting more distributed and our teams went home, right? So our teams were more distributed at the same time. And I think we could have handled one or the other with our existing kind of monitoring and observability. But having both of those happen at the same time really caused a paradigm shift. We needed to help our developers understand the system better because the system was getting more complex, and because we had new developers who had no context, who didn't have someone sitting next to them helping them walk through it, who needed to be able to get in there and troubleshoot and test performance.
So you need more knowledge, and knowledge becomes harder to get as your systems get more complicated and distributed. And at the same time, our existing methods of sharing that knowledge, of just assuming it's going to happen because you're in the same room, those are gone.
Yeah. We are a company that values sort of pair programming highly. And while we were still doing some of that, there's just absolutely nothing like that spontaneous knowledge that gets passed when you're in the same room. And we had to become much more intentional about that. And observability was one way to do that.
Great. So let's hear about how that worked. Oh, it was part of a larger modernization, right?
Yes. So Alston, who we mentioned, came on board, I want to say in March of 2021. And we went through this whole exercise. We realized that the CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment toolchain that we had, while it had worked to get us where we were, it was not going to keep working for the next couple of years of expansion, right? We got increasing complexity in our applications, increasing accelerated demand for new features and performance improvements, meant that we were going to have to deploy faster with higher quality and higher confidence. And we made a couple of different changes. Observability was going to be one of those changes.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because you said you had monitoring before, but people weren't using it.
Yeah, that sounds really bad, but we had
dashboards. They look so good. They screenshot well.
Yeah. Stakeholders love graphs. So at the time that we had done this sort of modernizing our CI/CD exercise, we were using a couple of different open source products, partially because there had been a concern about paying for sort of SaaS products and a desire to grow things in-house. But what we found was we had accidentally sort of bottlenecked our monitoring and troubleshooting response. There were only a couple of people who felt really confident updating those systems, using those systems in real time. So while we had dashboards that could let us know that something had gone wrong, there were only a couple of people who felt confident enough in the data that we were capturing and how to query it to be able to ask questions when things did go wrong. It doesn't help you at all to know that something is broken if you can't figure out how to fix it.
Right. So that knowledge was really isolated, which is dangerous.
It's very
and also
dangerous.
It's like, it's no fun for the rest of the team. And it's no fun for those two people who are always getting called either.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think we often emphasize that it's hard for the people who have become the bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're working with really smart, really committed people, when they suddenly run up against that wall where they can't answer their own question, that is also frustrating in and of itself. So we were definitely in that boat.
Yeah. Great. So you wanted monitoring that did more than just application performance monitoring of it's good, it's bad.
And now what?
Right. So you're looking for more value than that.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of value are you what kind of value were you looking for?
I love that we start right at the top with mean time to resolution, because numbers are the easiest way to sometimes sell people who are helping you pay for tools, right?
Looks good on slides.
It looks so
Stakeholders
good on slides. Stakeholders love it. And it's valuable, but it really goes back to what we were just talking about. When something goes wrong, how quickly can you understand the problem and begin to identify a solution? I mentioned that we made a couple of different changes in our CI/CD process at the same time. We legitimately didn't have an MTTR baseline to measure against, so I can't give you a hard number, but I can say anecdotally, the number of people who feel empowered to respond to incidents has gone up, which is huge. And time is going down because people are able to say, I know that something has gone wrong. I know where to look for answers. It's not which of these 7 tools do I need to be in, it's I need to be in Honeycomb. And we are getting closer and closer to having enough context built into that data that people can resolve those instances or identify the resolutions, even if it takes a while to actually implement.
The implement adding the context? Or the solution.
Implement the solution. Sometimes the solutions are not, everybody saw the AWS outage yesterday. I know they had identified a resolution. It took a couple hours to come online. Like we all felt it. But at least getting to identifying the solution is getting faster, which is great.
That's super important. And that context, you're always going to be adding context to your traces, to your events, and that's if you're ever done, you've failed, because we're always learning more, and we're always adding more distributed pieces and more features, and great. And then so your time to resolution is definitely going down, but also your people who can do it, and your confidence is bigger because everyone can access it. Oh, that was important when you were picking a tool, right? The licensing.
Yes. In a world where you just get limitless buckets of money, maybe this wouldn't be a consideration, but we're a growing company. Like we have to justify our dollar spend. And we were running into things where you were either licensing based on users, and we have doubled our development team in the time that I've been at Campspot. which is super exciting. But I wouldn't say that we wanted to double our licensing costs. That's less exciting. So we wanted to stay away from a user-based licensing policy.
Because when you have that, then the incentive is, again, to create those few people with access.
Yes.
And keep other people in the dark. And that's not what you want in your development team. And that's not what you want your observability tool to push you toward.
Yeah, no, it's subtle, but it's real. And we have everybody in the system. Everybody, as soon as they come on board, part of their onboarding is they get provisioned with a Honeycomb account. There are certain teams that really emphasize that on their onboarding. So like our developer teams focus on that in their onboarding. Our account managers don't necessarily focus on it, but they begin to start using it as they more and more get into the actual supporting of the parks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, that's really cool because it's not user-based licensing, it like starts leaking out and into products and into support, and more people in the company can get value from it.
Absolutely. So developers use it, account managers, are product owners, which I know is not true all of the time. And we've definitely got a few people who are like hardcore business folks who also poke around in it occasionally. They're probably not in there every day, but to even just like see their names on that user board is super exciting for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know our product people use it to be like, okay, who's using this feature? Is it successful? And also like our marketing department uses it for like, who should I contact at this customer? Who's the power user of our product?
Yeah.
The product, our observability data can tell them that.
That's really cool. That's super granular and I like it.
Yeah. Granular. Granular is a great word because a lot of our documentation uses the word high cardinality, which is confusing. That's not a word most people use. But granular, that's the thing, is when you can group that data down to the individual customer, campsite or camper, then you can really find out about customer experience.
Yeah. And figure out if it's a completely isolated event. I don't know if this has happened to anybody else's teams. We've got one quality analyst who's like hopping around between all of our different environments all of the time. And she just accumulated cookies galore because she's in every single environment all of the time. And she, like spot on, recognized that we had an issue, raised the alarm, like, we have an issue, this is happening. And we were like within minutes able to say like, it's one user. It's definitely this user. Like, you need to clear your cache. Everything's fine. Nobody in production is seeing without having to, like pull in the on-call folks or anything. So that was a pretty funny one early on.
Nice. Okay, so you can answer the question, hey, it's not working for me. Is it working for other people?
Yep. Working for literally everybody except you. Clear your cache, try again.
Yes, when the cookies get that large for everybody, it's going to matter, but that's a ways off.
Should we keep an eye out? Yes. Is prod down? Absolutely not. So,
nice.
Good. So we talked about user-based licensing, and I just want to also call out, we rejected a couple of other APM tools because they use server-based licensing. And camping is a very seasonal business. And we scale up and down accordingly, which is great. But again, I wouldn't necessarily say that we are not so mature in that model that every single scale up is tied directly to revenue, right? It's an approximate scale. So to have our licensing tied directly to that does weird things like incentivize us to be very careful with scaling or subtly push us to use like larger instances instead of scaling more horizontally. And we're
the still licensing in that on your SaaS,
right?
You don't want to have to take that into consideration with your architecture. You want to use the architecture that's right for your systems.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're right, like disincentivizing scaling up, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned that the pricing model you do want scales with value, scales with like if it goes up with requests, that's you providing value to your customers. So it's okay for this to cost more.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Honeycomb's event-based pricing does that.
It does. Yeah. If we get double, Black Friday, we get a bunch of people searching and booking, and we're making money and our parks are making money, like that's okay. We're game for that. Like you gotta spend observability money to support your customers and make money in the long run. We just wanted to do that wisely. And I think the event model does that.
Great. And as a bonus, you got ease of onboarding. But okay, so let's talk about the costs. Not just money. We're okay with the pricing model, but in developer time, implementing Honeycomb is not instantaneous or free.
It's not instantaneous or free, but if you have ever, I'm going to use a personal example, put off like making a dentist appointment for months and months because you're like, this is going to be a long drawn out process. And
dude, I start having dreams where my teeth fall out and are like rattling around in my mouth. That's when I know it's time.
Yeah. You need to do it. And 99% of the time, it's not as painful as you think it's going to be. And for that 1%, like I feel you. So we knew we were in dire straits. There was, maybe some tooth pain happening. We started evaluating products in April, and we actually lucked out and like caught some bugs during the implementation phase, which was awesome, but I don't want to promise that for everybody. But we had events.
Pretty common. It's like you see the trace for the first time. This happened to me the other day. I looked at a trace and went, bug. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So we like evaluated in April and we're getting direct value from production by July.
Nice. Oh, let's look at that calendar
thing. Didn't derail our product roadmap. So
that's important. Yes. So it fit within your existing roadmap.
Yeah. I would say, if I'm being super honest, probably if you asked a product owner, they would be like, you nudged us a little bit and we would have gotten like one more thing done, but it didn't derail it.
And now the product owners are getting value.
So at the end of the quarter, everybody was happy with how things shook out. So it wasn't nothing because we hadn't planned on it at the beginning of the quarter, but all things equal turned out pretty well. So we signed a contract in a quarter.
That's pretty quick.
No, right? We signed a contract in early May. We did a 2-week training workshop with Alicia in late May. 1 week really just focused on implementation with the dev team. 1 week really focused on service level objectives and service level indicators. That was more based around like sales and account managers and product owners. And we had events from our 2 core services in early June. By mid-June, we were starting to add in some of that custom information. So for us, Park ID is what allows account managers to talk to developers.
Gives you the granularity that matters to you.
Yep. So like that was the first thing that we added in. All of our teams had something in production by July. And this is when product owners started to be able to say, hey, I've got, a bucket of developer hours that I want to allocate towards kind of cleaning up tech debt and these things. Which of our API endpoints are, failing most often? Which ones are taking longer than we expected? I can run these by, my stakeholders and my customers and figure out which of these are priorities using the Honeycomb data.
Right. Right. Yeah. Honeycomb data can show you where you need to add data.
Yep. Yeah. Where we need to add data and help back up, customer surveys, right? If you've got a couple of
customer surveys are like it's slow.
People, it can kind of skew things and they're important in their own right, but to be able to say, you know, who of the people that I haven't been able to talk to directly is impacted by this? What are my numbers?
Nice. So the customer surveys are giving you clues that you're then able to take those as hypotheses and draw out experiments from the data.
Exactly.
Yeah, experiments that you don't have to do. You're just like, production, tell me about this.
Right. Yeah. Or production, provide me some hypotheses. And then when I go to meet with people in person, I can bring those hypotheses, you know, can work both ways.
Oh, like, is this particular thing slow for you?
Yeah. Or does it really matter if it's slow? Do you mind if this one's not slow, but you need this one because you have to access it when a customer drives up to your window versus something that you would just load after hours?
Okay.
Right? That's maybe something we wouldn't be able to see from here, but you can kind of correlate that with the human story.
Man, the important stuff is about getting better questions.
Yep.
That's the real advancements. Answers are easy.
Questions are hard.
Yeah. When you have the right questions, answers are easy.
Yeah.
Great.
So this is kind of like, consider these boxes sort of representative of the level of effort that's being put in from developer teams at this point. So like implementation took the most effort, and we just started with auto instrumentation. So it took like a half day to get stuff instrumented with auto instrumentation.
Half a day.
Half a day.
Nice.
It took some time to sort of massage that through our CI/CD pipeline so that we were actually like able to get our deployed environment sending stuff. But not a huge lift. This is the dentist appointment. We've been putting it off. We thought it was going to take ages. We were like, we're going to instrument this, and then we're going to have to massage all of the tracing. Nope.
Yeah,
literally,
to make an appointment, you actually have to call a human on a phone, which like sounds terrible. And after it's done, you're like, why did I postpone that for so long?
Exactly. And I think the really important win for us is uncertainty is hard for all humans, right? And we were uncertain about what was going to happen with tracing between applications, right? That's like a huge part of this value in distributed systems.
Right, but that's the distributed tracing that's so important, but you've got to make the propagation work. Right. Which the auto instrumentation is darn good at.
It is really good. And you know, like there's kind of weird edge cases, but we were thinking even just to get distributed tracing between like our two main systems was going to involve a lot of sort of manual intervention, and it worked right out of the box.
Sweet.
I like remember the moment that our like payments team lead was like, I can literally just see it stream through. I can see where it's coming from. I see my app doing what it's supposed to do. I see it sending it back. We didn't have to do anything to make that happen other than have all of them sending their auto instrumented data to the same Honeycomb data set.
Yay, open telemetry.
It was awesome. Yeah. Augmenting, this is really where like understanding what questions you're asking at that particular moment in time is helpful. Our questions are going to evolve as our business evolves. But when we started using it, we had a pretty clear understanding of the types of questions that we're asking right now. And that helped us kind of add in some of that custom information. We'll keep doing that forever, but
so like within each service, you might add different things. Everything needs park ID, but maybe some things need camper ID or what other?
Yeah, so things like
sometimes it's a payment.
Sometimes it's payments. Is there information, not like personal information, but is there information about the payment processor that would be helpful to answering some of these questions?
Oh, right. Yeah. Like which one is down?
Processor. Yep. We have hypotheses. That kind of thing. And then I wanted to note that we've got a sunset portion on here that not every team is going to deal with. So this is where our old sort of like open source metrics and logging and APM tools are going to actually finally shut down by the end of the year. We wanted to keep them up just for while people were developing confidence in the system to know that they could go back to what they were used to. or just like gut check apples to apples on something. We feel pretty good. We're shutting them down.
So that's, yeah, because that's a good point, because you have to migrate the people who do have the knowledge of the old monitoring tools, those few who were able to do it, they have to migrate.
Yeah.
And learn how to do this in Honeycomb.
Yep. And I was one of them, and I'm fully on board, and it's lovely. The one thing we will probably continue to keep alongside is like a full logging system. We tried to put all of our logging into the events, and it's just, for us, turning out to be something that is helpful to sort of have a place that you can click through to dive in deeper and see the full log messages in like a really consumable manner. But other than that, everything else is coming in. It's great.
Great. And so when you sunset those old systems, that frees up it frees up your cognitive load of things you don't have to keep running. You don't even have to know about them anymore.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, there's going to be a whole new generation of incoming devs who don't even know what we're talking about, and it's lovely.
Yeah, that's progress.
Yeah.
Sweet. Before yeah, and then there's this surprise.
Yes.
Because there's tell us how Honeycomb has impacted developer confidence, and I'm going to make this GIF go away.
Cool. Couple of things, right? Honeycomb enabled us to move from weekly deploys on one of our main services to daily deploys. So for some teams who are already on a really fast deploy cadence, that might not sound like a lot, but that's 500 times faster than what we were doing. And that's a big win for us.
Count 7.
Weekday deploys.
So five times faster.
5 times faster.
But the experience is a big difference, because if what you just pushed and got reviewed and merged today goes out today instead of Tuesday.
Yep.
That's a big difference in like how many changes are in each deploy. Yeah, and how familiar you are with these changes. Because if it was a week ago, I don't remember what I did a week ago.
No, I don't know anybody who does. Not super effectively. It's made a big difference on yes, developers, but also like our QA folks, because they're only testing a couple of changes instead of like this whole big backlog of things that might be interacting with each other. So they're able to kind of find more narrow down the variables if there is something that they're seeing much faster, rather than trying to figure out like which of these many changes in this release might be causing this. So yeah, all around, just simpler, faster. The other part of this.
So even though you're only deploying 5 times as much, there's a qualitative difference there.
Yes.
In how hard each deploy is and how safe each deploy is.
Yes. So each individual deploy is safer, just because it's got fewer changes in it. And then we don't run true experiments. So we didn't run Honeycomb for a year with no other changes to our system, right? So alongside Honeycomb, we brought on a new continuous deployment tool that Honeycomb interacts with. So if we set up an SLI in Honeycomb and we're like, this is one of the SLIs that we want to watch on this deploy, if things change with that or that starts to trip, we can roll back.
What's it for the record? What's an SLI?
Sorry, a service level indicator. So that is, you could probably explain this faster.
But I want to hear. I want to hear what.
So if a service level objective is a measure of how performant or reliable your system should be, and what the acceptable level of failure is, a service level indicator is a simple binary yes, no on whether that event meets or fails to meet that SLO. So we track that on a more granular level.
So if a service level objective is like 99.9% of customer reservation attempts complete within 2 seconds and return success.
Yep.
Then that service level indicator will be, did it complete fast enough and did it return success?
Yes.
And then your percentages is not based on minutes in a day, which is a lot less relevant. It's based on actual attempts to reserve a spot or whatever it is you're measuring. Exactly. So that service level indicator also says, is this the kind of event that I'm interested in? Is this a reservation request? And if so, we're going to yes, no. And then if you start to get too many no's, such that you're not going to, if this keeps up for a few hours, you're not going to meet your service level objective for the month anymore.
Yep.
Then it starts paging people.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's been big. I would say our change failure rate is not super high, but just to know, I think it might be you that mentioned, like, even when you wake up in the morning, naturally to know that you've woken up before your alarm clock because your alarm clock is there.
Oh.
So if you send out a release, to know that you will be contacted if something is going wrong is a different level of confidence, even if that feedback loop doesn't happen.
Well, and when something goes wrong, it's not a root canal.
Right.
It's just a cleaning.
Just the cleaning.
Maybe a cavity. You might have to dig a little, but you have the tools for it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that developer confidence of, like, I find it in familiarity with production, just like production is not this mystery.
Yeah.
It is accessible.
It is accessible.
Oh, you said earlier something about one of the teams that's moved to faster deployments had an incident the other day.
We did. We had an almost incident, which
the best kind.
It's the best kind of incident. Yeah, and we're trying to figure out how to, like, casually mention this to the CEO, just to, let him know that something didn't happen because we're doing things right. But basically, faster deploys. Something went out. We noticed something shift in our monitoring. So actually our SLOs had not been affected yet. So while that's a really useful
so by monitoring, do you mean, like, was it a Honeycomb dashboard?
Somebody was just like the CloudWatch metrics going into Honeycomb. Yeah, so Honeycomb dashboard, but fed by AWS. Noticed that, like, our auto scaling on this application was way out of line, like just really unusual, and nothing had happened yet. But that was a really quick, like, oh, okay, auto scaling is off. I recognize this because I'm in here all the time because production is accessible. Was able to trace that to the, like, observability events data set. See, oh, this endpoint is getting hit like hundreds and hundreds of times higher than it normally is. I can see that in the graph. What is it? I go into the trace. Oh, it's looping. It's looping where it shouldn't be looping. That's causing our resource usage on that server to go up. That's triggering our auto scaling. We hit a ceiling on that auto scaling group at some point. We do have a max set. So if we had hit that max, so we sort of follow the trend line, that would have been, like, I think we figured out it would happen at like 9 or 10 o'clock Mountain Time when everybody's logged off and is doing other things. That probably, like, the whole system would have crashed because everything would have been out of room and unable to spin up new instances. And it was a really quick, like, I see something's off. I can go through, I can see it's this endpoint. I can confirm with the developer that that endpoint was affected in the release that went out this morning. They rolled back, everything stabilized in like 30 minutes from, like, hitting the button, deploy went out, auto scaling starts to adjust itself, and nothing happened.
Yay.
It was so good. It was one of those, like, oh, right, we're modernizing our auto scaling. We're modernizing our observability. We're modernizing our deployment. And that all chained together just so beautifully.
Yeah. Yeah. Because auto scaling it's a little scary if you don't have ways of looking at it and finding out why stuff is happening. And modern observability is necessary for the modern level of distribution and systems.
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your story?
Those are the big points for me, but I'm sure that people have questions. We're all kind of doing this modernization and maturation of that together. So I'd love to hear where people are.
Yeah, so if anyone has questions, please type them into the chat or raise your hand. Yeah, that's a thing too. Let's see. Kristen, what are you gonna do next? Where do you go from here? What's the next modernization?
Yeah, so we're still in the process of transitioning all of our metrics over in a sort of sustainable way. So we have started that for our production data sets, so our Prometheus data going into Honeycomb.
Nice.
Which means we don't have to manage our Prometheus instances anymore, which I'm very excited about. Like not a huge thing, but when you're already wearing a lot of hats, it's just nice to be able to take that one thing and sort of hand it over to a SaaS provider.
Yeah. So you mentioned that earlier, like maybe a year ago, Campspot was reluctant to subscribe to SaaS, software as a service stuff.
Yeah, we've gotten burned in the past with that user licensing model.
Oh.
So they like pivoted from a like kind of big name APM tool to we need to figure out how to do this in-house with open source. And then was sort of Goldilocks when Honeycomb came on the market.
Okay, so a pricing model that aligns with your value.
Pricing model that aligns with our value, being able to add custom context, which we could not do with our big name APM, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
A one-click, and it's great and it's super powerful right out of the box, and then you can't continue to make it more powerful. Like that just is what you get.
Because when you build it in-house, you have that ability to customize it as you need it, but you also have this huge fixed cost, and it's not right, the fixed cost of implementing it and maintaining it. And the thing about that is that you don't know how much that's going to cost any given month.
Nope.
It's like home ownership. People are like really big on owning a home, but honestly, you know what? When you rent, you know how much it's going to cost every month. And if something goes wrong, it's somebody else's job to fix it. And that seems like way more rational to me than I have to have like, a nest egg, because any given year I could have to put on a new roof and replace the air conditioning. And that's going to be like 30 grand.
I think it also depends where the business is, right? So like we're at this really critical scaling point for us, and small businesses are notoriously bad at being able to guesstimate their infrastructure costs. And we're, like proud owners of that club, right? Like we scaled way faster than we thought we were going to, partially because of the pandemic and camping. Our sort of like infrastructure and operating costs went way up. Having places that we could identify where the cost is relatively predictable, it's not perfectly predictable, but relatively predictable, helps us reduce unnecessary uncertainty, right? Like there's good uncertainty. We're scaling, we don't know what next month is going to look like.
We might have even more customers. Good problems to have.
Good problems to have, right?
Right. Whereas, the infrastructure cost of running it yourself is hard to predict. The development cost, you can say it's going to cost at least this, but it's hard to predict. You don't know when something's going to go wrong, and you're going to have to spend that time on it. And you get there's that little bit of adding what you want, that is really high value.
Yes.
But on top of that, setting up your own Prometheus and Grafana and et cetera, that's not value. That's just
not. And they're great tools, but they're
to adding that customization. Yeah. Whereas Honeycomb, yes, there's some work, but it's all the work you want to do. Right?
Yeah. There's that sort of like good stress versus bad stress. There's like good implementation work, and then there's just sort of like
adding park ID, one line of code.
Yep.
Poof, you have way more context in your traces. That's super, super valuable.
Yeah.
I love those lines of code because from like a domain-driven design perspective, they're so expressive of what matters.
Yes.
A lot better than the printfs. I do a fair number of printfs, but then I go through them afterward and I'm like, okay, some of these are actually relevant, and those I'm going to turn into span attributes. If I didn't do a span attribute to start with, and others of them, the just was here. I don't need that anymore.
You don't need just was here. You don't need testing.
Right.
You don't need, you shouldn't see this in prod. Yeah.
Oh no, no, those I leave in.
Those are good. Okay.
Those are span events, man. I want to be able to search Honeycomb for you shouldn't see this in prod and find out what's really happening in prod.
Fair point. Yeah. No, it's been, I don't know, we're entering sort of the reflective point of the year, right? Everybody's kind of looking back and figuring out what went well, what didn't. The move to observability into Honeycomb in particular for our business, for our teams going through the challenges they're going through right now, like hands down the best decision I made all year. So yeah.
Yay. Okay, that is an awesome place to stop. Oh yeah. So you recommended in the next step slide here, that last point about Liz's post.
Yeah. I think it can be, we've talked about this a little bit, it can feel really daunting, especially if you're trying to like eat the whole elephant at the same time. Being able to identify where you would get the most value out of observability and just start with that. Start with the auto instrumentation. It will get you tracing some base metrics right out of the box.
And it'll give you ideas.
You figure out what questions you're trying to ask and then move from there, rather than trying to like waterfall your observability journey. Like, you don't have to know everything, you just have to get started.
Great. And let's see, if you're watching this live, you will benefit from knowing about Honey Dev Week, which is next week in December 2021. And that we have an intro to observability workshop on the first day. And then we have, hey, look at these cool things Honeycomb can do on the next day to like give you mad skills at the product. And then integrations with partners on the third day. So that'll be fun. And of course, if you haven't signed up for Honeycomb yet, please do. Let us know what you think. And finally, if you want personalized advice, this isn't on the slide, but if you want to talk about your particular situation, you can talk to me or to Liz Fong Jones at honeycomb.io/office-hours. We have just general availability to talk to people and find out about your world. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, this was fantastic. Thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk to you. And thank you, everyone. And the recording will be available, and I think you'll probably get an email when it is available so you can share it to people. Thank you.